Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Davich, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book, DeKalb County Public Library, and Poetry Atlanta, welcome to our annual Voices Carry poetry reading. We're so glad that you allowed us to come into your homes tonight. We know a lot of our programs have transferred here online due to the global pandemic, and this is probably where we'll be meeting you for a long time to come. But we hope these programs will be entertaining, and we can hope you can join us for as many of these as possible. Right now, what I'd like to do is remind you that each of our poets this evening will give a reading, and if you have any questions that you would like to ask afterward, you can either type it into the chat or use the Q&A feature at the top or the side of your screen. I'd also like to thank the DeKalb Library Foundation. They're the fundraising arm for our library system, and they're providing the Zoom account that's bringing us to your homes this evening. I'd also like to thank, of course, Collin Kelley and Poetry Atlanta, and of course, Charis Books More, who have books for all of the poets this evening. Like so many bookstores in the area, they are doing mailing books to your home, and they've also started doing pop-up book sales on their front porch and in their parking lot. So we hope that if you're not in the Atlanta area, that you will consider patronizing an independent bookstore and helping those in the community, especially the Black-owned bookstores and Black-owned businesses. Because of course, if you love a poet, you need to buy poetry. It's just as simple as that, folks. So right now, I would like to turn the program over to Collin Kelley, who heads up Poetry Atlanta. They've always been a wonderful friend to the Georgia Center for the Book, and they continue to bring us great programming by poets from around the Metro and Georgia areas. Collin?
Hi, Joe. Thank you so much. And thank you, Georgia Center for the Book, for hosting our Voices Carry reading once again. I am Collin Kelley, and thank you for joining us. We have an amazing lineup of poets tonight who are going to be reading for you. And I'm going to introduce them to you now, and then they're going to read. And then if you'll hang around for a few minutes afterwards, we're going to do a short Q&A. So we'll hope you'll hang around and ask the poets some questions. But let me get right to introducing the poets to you. And then before they begin to read, I'm going to read a poem for you, since I'm a poet also. And then we'll get going with the evening. So let me introduce tonight's slate. First, we will begin with the wonderful Theresa Davis, who hosts the Java Monkey Speaks, although it's not called Java Monkey Speaks anymore. I keep having to remind myself that it's just Java Speaks, the every week open mic. She's also the author of Drowned, A Mermaid's Manifesto, which is out from Sibling Rivalry Press. And she just recently finished up a run in a play made up of her poetry at 7 stages. So can't wait for you to hear what Theresa has tonight. We'll also be hearing from Julie E. Bloemeke, whose debut collection, Slide to Unlock, has just been published by Sibling Rivalry Press. We also have Gustavo Hernandez, who has a micro chapbook out right now called Form His Arms, and his debut collection called Flower Grand First will be out from Moontide Press in 2021. And then we have Karen Head, who we have to send congratulations. She has just been named the Poet Laureate of Fulton County. She is also the Waffle House Poet Laureate, and I'm sure she'll answer your questions about that if you want to know. And her latest poetry collection is, it just went right out of my head. Oh, I'm having a senior moment. Her poetry collection, Lost on Purpose. And I remembered that without having to have Karen break in and tell me. And then we will close with Cecilia Woloch, who is joining us from LA. And she is the author of so many wonderful collections, Carpathia, Sigan, and we are thrilled that she is here. I think Cecilia has been doing this reading with us every year except 1 year. So I think she's been here since we started doing this in the early 2000s, and she's been with us for every one. So we are really excited that Cecilia is back with us here virtually. So they're going to read to you in that order for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'm going to start by reading a poem for you. And this is a poem that's going to be in my next collection that will be out whenever it's out. It's called Inglewood. We are lost in this hotel, roaming hallways, channel surfing. Sleep refuses to come even after we have. Sex is easy. At this height, the windstorm is moan and constant crack. The buildings of downtown shrouded in dust and smoke from fires in the hills. We sit wide awake, silently watching each other's reflection in the window, piecing together the lost 2 years. We could never love each other. You were too determined for LA life, and I can only stomach it for 4 days before the East calls me home. And I'm too old for you anyway. You've got a husband who loves you in West Hollywood, and although he's recently become a stranger, we are no longer familiars. We speak different English now. The flyover states an ocean. Next morning, you'll go back to sunset fast life, waiting for an earthquake to come. I'll drive through storm debris, running late for my flight, back to my cheap apartment and dead-end job, writing poems about the wind. Thanks for listening to that. And so first up, Theresa Davis.
Can you hear me? Just checking. All right. Hey, how are you doing? I'm Theresa Davis. I'm going to read a couple of pieces. Most of them are from my new collection that will come out whenever I get off my ass and stop being depressed about the world. But, you know, we in a pandemic. That could take a minute. But I have been, my resume has grown in different directions because I'm doing things I didn't think I would do before. So I've been in a couple of films. This summer, I just finished an event with Horizon Theater, and actually it goes on till next weekend. It's a Halloween show, and it's The Ghosts of Little 5 Points. And I want to share with you the ghost that I was, and I was the ghost of incense. And if you know me, I don't care a whole lot for incense. It's just, all right. But I'm going to share this piece with you. It's called Incensed Because I'm Clever. That smoke in the air, that sweet smell of peace waiting for the inhale, that's me. The ghost you have unleashed have your name tattooed under its tongue. Some things you cannot come back from. Some days you are packed tight round, enjoying your own sweet when someone you do not know promises to set your world on fire. You have never been afraid of flames. You just know not to tempt them. Head kept low from snatching fingers, the dust of ash crumbling, a tumble off the counter kept me safe for a while. A place far away from the pyre of flames, a witness to waste, covering scent with scent. It just never made sense to me. Had they known? Had they asked, had I known, I would have chosen sachet or to be a smooth stone you could hold in your pocket, a calming gem, amethyst to censor, to fill you with peace. Then I'd retrace my steps, remember what I want to be, witnessing those I was close to, but never knew, smolder, dance, engulfed ablaze, their fiery, silent screams filling the air, smoke. My non-existent hands could not protect my non-existent ears. I did not want to be here. No one asked. No one said purge. No one said disappear forever. No one said scorching. And I have heard tales of these kinds of things. They are not pleasant. They do not end happily ever after. When they added water to make my paste, scented me lavender, my uniform shape ball cylinder and bamboo bindi, no one told me I would be sold for the burning. My flesh chewed away by flames, so much like the stories I've heard, the songs I've heard, like when Billy sang of strange fruit once hanging from the stink of magnolia trees on southern plantations. No one asked. Just grouped me with a bunch of strangers who felt like family, auctioned us away for incineration when they finally found me. When they pressed the match to my cheek blue to make sure the flames took glass jarred me into leaning, I burned. I burned all night. That smoke in the air, that sweet smell of peace waiting for the inhale. That's me. That's me. So that's Incense. That was that one. Yay. All right. This one is out of my new collection, I think the next couple, which is called Dirt, which if, Sibling Rivalry Press hasn't broken up with me yet, will be with them. I love you. All right. This is called The Verdict. A word to the wind that did not stir, not even a breeze, a coward, capable of sight, refusing to see her blindfold, never moved. What do we do now, Brother Wind? What kind of freedom can you offer to those who are not seen by justice but still murdered for the loudness of their black? What protection can you offer to wildflower bouquets too often handcuffed, then wrapped in plastic the color of body bags? Do you not hear my question, Brother Wind? Were you holding your breath? Should I hold mine too? Or do I wait? Let their gavels bang my dead body to dust as my ghost is tried for my own murder. Will you exhale then, Brother Wind? Scatter my remains to safer pastures where people are not born to die. I think I have two more, maybe three. I don't know. I stopped. I didn't do my stopwatch. Anyway, this one is called Tonsorial, and this is from my mother. When you are a single mother with 3 boys who have hair that they refuse to comb and school starts soon, there are stores that sell clippers, so you buy a pair. The barber shop is too expensive. 3 visits pays for the clippers, and then there is more money for the clothes they are outgrowing, for the shoes that always need replacing, for the meals misplaced midday in summer. This practical single mother knows she has no skill at cutting hair. But how hard could it be? She has seen hair cut. Her sons are not eager to be experimental performance art. No one wants to go first. The youngest loses the fight because youngest. He sits, not as calm as he pretends. There's a soft buzz, an ouch, a retort, damn, your ears are big, a little blood, and then, oops. The older brother slaps his hands across his lips to stuff back the expletive that will get his ass beat while the sisters laugh on the stairs. The younger brother advances on the mirror, mouth stretched in a scream that will not come. A tear falls. The mother is upset. She did not do it on purpose. She apologizes to the crying boy who now has to have it all cut off. A trim turns scalping. The older brother declares he wants to grow the biggest afro in the world ever. The middle son takes to grooming like it's his newfound religion, while the youngest develops an interest in hats. The clippers find a home in a drawer, away from shaking hands, only trying to get the job done, to keep the faces fed, to keep the clothes on bodies. She puts them away until school begins again. And I think I'm close to my time, so I'm going to do this last piece. And this is from Dirt, and this is Inheritance After the Exhumation. The walls, like I, have been holding our breath. The slide of scales, weight released over decades, my memories stretched across canvas, the smell of paint perfuming the air. When my words won't come, I retreat to glue and turpentine, the snip of scissors, acrylic, and oil. There are places I can escape from in plain sight, make it a destination, a remembrance eagerly received. In the days before today, when basement confinement was her ideal of childhood, of childcare or cover up, no sugar for the tea, the stale scent of dank, dark dirt filling my nose. Back then, my arsenal for exodus was limited to crayons missing their tips, markers, afraid to show their bold, their tops, covered in teeth marks, not mine. I would draw a world where there are no basements and all the tea had sugar. In that world, she cares more for her grandchildren than her cheating son's lover, more than being the prettiest beard, more than being a friend instead of a mother to a son who will discard her, teaching lessons that should not be learned. In that world, I see her future. No, her son will find her her own basement. I wonder if he apologized before planting her in the dank, dark dirt, filling the spaces around her dirt. With his continued absences, the way he dropped her off a bad habit she developed well. Did he at least gift her crayons, tips broken or brand new? Did he give her canvas so she could draw a world in hopes that next time she'll get it right? Thank you all so much for listening. Ooh, yay.
Thank you, Theresa. That was fantastic. Julie, you're on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much, Theresa. And one of the things that I miss so much is applause. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this because we have to. Thank you so much, Collin, Georgia Center for the Book, and Joe, and Voices Carry for bringing us all together. I have to say this is a little bit of an initiation. The very first time that I went to Voices Carry was the first time that I also heard Cecilia Woloch read. So the fact that I'm here in this chorus of voices tonight is just fantastic. And then the second part of the initiation is I'm following Theresa Davis, which is something I've been scared of for a long time, but just an absolutely fantastic reading. So I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to read a few poems from my collection, Slide to Unlock, my fellow sibling rivalry press fam here that debuted in March of 2020. And it is a book that took about a decade to work on and to write. And at the same time, I never, ever could have guessed that it would debut in a pandemic. It's a book about touch without touch. And who would have imagined that it would come in at a time when we all need touch more than ever? So I'm going to start with Electric Mail. You chime in, shock me back from work, and I am sudden, swift shot, crown to toe, electric in you, ravenous to read. Your name presses from pixels, a promise of no more silence. I trace your bends and twists, letters that stand up in your name. Remember the 17 years I searched, my fingers curving over the imprint of your initials, your spell. And now you rise over my screen. Come back to me. It would have been too much to visit with my body, call with my voice, send my cursive to your door. But now I can read your words, arced at last for me, savor the scatter of your type without the loops and dips of your written. I cannot press your stationery to my face, see the smudges you erased on the page, breathe the scent of you lingering in the lines. I cannot pocket you as before, make an altar of the few things your hands once made for me. We have wires to protect us now. You are an ocean away. Still we type, touch without touch, come closer, arrive more, and I let you in. My car, my coat, my sheets, I hold you in my hand, shocking. I tell myself, these are only letters pushed through anonymous keys. We have not lifted a pen, committed to paper, but already we are in my deepest vacant room. I take you to the bed I never left. We fall together, insisting there is safety in letters. As we write more, seal ourselves furiously into what we already know. Switching off at Cedar Point. Years later, after hearing of your divorce, her infidelity, I remember another time. The four of us, my husband, your wife, would switch children, hip jiggle babies so the other could ride, so we all could take a turn to throw our hands to sky and scream legitimately all the way down. We did this over and over, laughing ourselves to younger, such pink spun release. And well after dark, just before closing, in the shuffle of strollers and lines, you and I are alone on a crowded shuttle. Without a word, you rest your heavy head in my lap, face away. And whether from exhaustion or want, I allow myself one last pleasure, to run my fingers through the thick question of your hair. You slide one arm beneath my knees, the other over the top. Press back to me as if to keep from falling or screaming. And when we stopped, they were waiting. The man, the woman, the sticky, sleeping children, all the beautiful ones we'd once said yes to. I had wonderful news a couple weeks ago, which was that Pine Hills Review had chosen a poem of mine for Best of the Net. And it's in Slide to Unlock, so I thought I would share it with you tonight. You're breaking up. The last time I saw you, we were almost naked and breaking up, though could we have known either then? Only the phone, with its curls and non-face, would give us enough courage to say to a mouthpiece, it's over. And even then, you would hold the line, say, wait, please. And I could hear you getting high, wanting to ease out and hang on, and how I would keep us two, talking us back into that room where again, I had been trying on you to get over him. That blue room with its corduroy walls where we were slipping and playing Todd Rundgren, and you were whispering, maybe begging, think of me, as your hand made its way down my hips to my thighs, and how for just this once I would lie back for you, even when you knew I would never let you in. And how we shared beer from a dark bottle, and how later I took you close enough that you began to sing, even after Todd had long given up. Seeing you, and after how we faced the ceiling, hanging the possibility of sex like paper stars, glittering and just out of reach. And how neither of us ever hung up, falling asleep over the wires, waking in the morning, the receiver somehow still and dead on the pillow next to each of us. I am beyond excited, gobsmacked, chuffed to have a poem in this collection, Mother Mary, the Mother Mary anthology that Karen Head and Collin Kelley worked so hard on. It is absolutely stunning to hold this in person, and it is not out until November, but I hope that you all will order a copy. This was also in Slide to Unlock, and this is Statue Prayer at 15. There's a refrain of Mary, and you should know that it's Mary, M-A-R-Y, Mary, M-E-R-R-Y, and Mary, M-A-R-R-Y. Mother, in my world, virginity is defined by loss. Admission, an easy litmus. As soon as I open to confession, their touches turn from want to sister. But here I am on my knees, still in this jaded light, your static mouth jeweled in the cut of votive flame. What if I believe this is my way, that for once I have found the diadem of no as a kind of salvation, at last a place where I am heard? What if I think of your face smiling in yes, when I whisper in the thresh of desire, what if I pray to hold, wait for the one true found? I cannot bear their eager lips, their breath heavy at the chapel of want, the way they try their hands at the altar of my legs. I soften to their kisses, yes, the rare sweetness of their words when they are without motive. Someone has painted a heart on your hand. Someone has touched you with gold. I tip my forehead to your cracked hem, hardened in its line. My knees grow numb with leaning. I whisper up to you, "Oh Mary, oh Mary, oh Mary." Is it all a trinity of trickery, a prayer of persuasion, of false faith? And still the problem of this star crossed over my body, forever this burden we call light. I'm going to end with two new poems. The first debuted in the recently relaunched Resurrected Limp Wrist, and this is Poem Before the Whitney. For Robert. Without weather, I would not have come to this, settled onto a stool, listening as one bartender banters over bitters, strains the ice, while another comes to me, slides a napkin next to my notebook, and asks what I do. And to hell with it, I think. I am in New York, so I go with the truth and confess. I am a poet. He considers this. Surprises me because he does not say he is one too, doesn't regale me with some conflated syrup of social media verse. He even correctly references Frost's The Road Not Taken versus The Road Less Traveled. He doesn't ask where I've published or joke about a beret. Instead, he knuckle wraps the bar, says he will be back. And I continue to write, which I know now is just to be writing. He returns with my Manhattan and pours himself a shot. We lift our glasses in unison, bring the ring of them together. To the words, he laughs. And after a long pull, he says, "It's all on the house." And I put down my pen because for right now, nothing could be better than to leave it all unfinished. So thank you again to Limp Wrist and Dustin Brookshire for giving that poem a home. And I will end with this. Admiral Grace Hopper was known for saying, "Ask forgiveness, not permission." However, that particular quote is often misinterpreted. So the title of this poem is "Ask Permission, Then Forgiveness." Something in me wants to laugh, which happens in the sweat and slick of naked. Bodies shuck and shift, smack and slide, suck and slither. How I thought for years they had to be silent unless there was a moan or an exclamation. But tonight there is the unexpected, a question. You might guess, do you like this or this way? But those have already been asked. Because when his knees are to my knees, when he skims his hands between my hips in reverence, when I am aching to have him in, he slows to find my eyes and say, do I have your permission? And I do it then. I quarter a laugh because I have never been asked this before. But he is as serious as a worship service. And he continues his hands over my knees, my thighs, and I shock as the door of longing breaks with this question I never knew I could be asked. I need the words. Ask me again, I say. And he says, do I have your permission to be inside of you? And it is something about his earnestness, his intention, the newness of all of this that makes me cry out, then cry. I did not expect any of it. He gathers me into his arms, a sea of tiny lights. He holds space. He holds me. It is a question he has never asked either, he says, but he has been reading, and it made him think of all the holiness we forget to speak, of all the ways we do not bow before the sacred, acknowledge the truth, our sacrosanct bodies. And as we kiss, I feel myself shaking into the hundreds of thousands of women before me whose bodies begged not to be beaten, broken, dismantled. L'origine du mal, defiled, feared, made into a travesty with teeth. Women who rise like singing blooms in a field now, who have held this question for generations. Who am I to be asked? I take his words into my mouth, my blood. I let them pulse for all that could not have them and all that will have them from now on. And as we climb back into each other, our mouths of entrance and escape, he cries out and cries. And this time when he asks, I shatter yes from the marrow fury, a fire so raw it blazes through our bodies, and the stars call out in love, and they say, at last, welcome home.
Thank you, Julie. That was beautiful. Next up, we have Gustavo Hernandez.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gustavo Hernandez. I am coming to you from Anaheim, California. First, I just want to say thank you to the Georgia Center for the Book, to Julie, Karen, Cecilia, Theresa, and to Collin, who I have a full-length poetry collection coming out next year. And Collin was the first poet who read the collection and told me that it was something that should be published. So Collin is a person who's very special to me, and I was very excited to be asked to be here. So we'll go ahead and get to the poems. My first poem is called Vaudelia, and it is for one of my aunts. Grand Mal seizures. My guess it was my tia Vaudelia's burden. All of these decades later, from what my mother tells me, all of her life in Jalisco, at the foot of a plateau, some wilderness, in the disadvantage of an era, to us now, the disadvantage of old time, in an adobe house, in the mist, el gran mal. When my grandmother died, her daughters thought they saw the source of her cancer take the shape of an owl and fly into the dry moonlit ruffle of a wamuchi. In town, depressed women were explained by poison fed to them in food flavored with envy or by the hands of jilted lovers. But Vaudelia was different. What ill will could befall someone who lived clutching her mother's rebozo her entire life? A sickness, a sadness, poor child, poor girl, poor woman. I guess at her half living in a stasis. I paint joy in the warm dirt patios of spring, ear to a rustle and glint of a finch song in the Noche Buena. The warmth of the stone oven in her parents' kitchen, the blossoms of her sister's fortunes. My mother says when I was born, she asked to hold me, that I felt her arms outstretching, her breath expanding. Give him to me, Lupe. I can hold him. I won't drop him. I won't get sick. This next poem is called Santa Ana, 4th grade. Is that the fairy? Our voices all squeak, so this question isn't about that. Someone's been paying attention, and again, I am named before I have understood myself. Someone has discovered me, a girl who is a cousin of a boy I thought and called my friend, a boy who's named himself white trash because he is among us. Someone has discovered me, chaining the clovered horizon to garland. They've seen the crushed jacaranda paste on my palms. So this is the spot where I branch out in purple, here where the popsicle melts its red and its blue. This one street, wide as a landing strip, heat waves rippling in the invisible, asphalt markings that lead up to them like a parable to temptation. This next poem is called How to Be a Heartbreaker, and it's an instructional, but you all don't need any help with that, I'm sure. I am a slow, slow boy, and the ceiling of the room descends, bass beating the flora, purple dazzling, measuring these men, their grayskull heft, measuring only the belt and the muscle. Picture them evenly matched, evenly skilled, even Steven, block-jawed hard. Imagine them always knowing where the hot blast will hit before the sword is even drawn. God's aim across the room, and through his summer, I am pulling myself apart, melting what is left with my version of their holy fire. The man who knows all of their drinks asks why he's never seen me here before. But the echo of my arm pushing a 20 toward him travels back, finding its approximate shape for weeks. I am changing, reforming to visibility. This is discipline, flexing as a greeting. These are men, God's aim, me soon. A working body prying the slick door open between dimensions, filling a black ceiling with a prayer smoke image, an inversion. Imagine above you a fat-cheeked boy, his belly keeping him there eternally, watching. This next poem is called Pecs, and it's named after my favorite gay bar. My brother and I at a bar in San Diego, and luck is all we talk about. IPAs start to blur into lagoon water bulrush and yerba mansa, and we agree no portents could have ever been thought up for all of this. The neon 24-hour liquor stores, the sweet spot in a Saturday night where it opens up and wide like someone saying, dude, you can pay what's due tomorrow. We take control of the jukebox. Luck is all we talk about. Our country still down south, both our parents sleeping right up I-5. At 1 a.m., the mirror in the tagged up restroom steadies. Look how far you've come, drunk with 3 cities in your mouth, Jalisco mustache and a trucker's belly, sleeves cut off to the love handles, standing around like a new word the whole coast got comfortable using. This next poem and the last one that I read are two of the newest. They're going to be in Flower Grant First, which is the collection coming out next year. But I got a chance to kind of, beef up the book. My publisher gave me a little bit more time. So these they quickly became some of my favorites. So I hope you like them. This one's called 1990 20XX. Some nights I'd sit in any open driveway space. Across the street, the skyline was a dim bulb outline of an avocado tree and a television antenna. Beyond, the future was a searchlight, one of those Hollywood premiere numbers. The future was a McDonald's commercial where the moon plays a grand piano in a rented tux. The future was the DNA remix of Tom's Diner. Not this sad, finite iridescence. How a truck can go from orange cream to scarab shell to that loud sweetness he called burgundy, then disappear, even though its downshifting always sounded so long breath hopeful. All night, the city holds its colors still to signal what is missing. The eastern stretch of First Street won't unclasp into the hills. Not one grain of earth decides to release another. The spray paint messages dry and sink into the murals. The night used to ring out in synthesizer bells. Here is where they sat and counted one another. You see, there had been a father. While I was writing this collection, my father passed away, and it obviously took the collection and expanded it because so much, the collection started off as a set of poems dealing with immigration, my childhood, my teenage years, coming out as a gay man. But I think that once my dad passed away, I started seeing how all of those things that I was writing about had everything to do with my family and less to do with me personally. So it just, it expanded the collection completely. These next two poems are about him. The first one's called Santiago Canyon. One summer, your granddaughter said I'd never grow old because I still wore shorts and my socks up to mid-calf. But I was 38 in summer school up on a hill you tended to before you got sick, before all we didn't make in this country began to turn on us. On the way there, I distracted myself with the star thistle, the odd poppy, the lots I remembered you cleared. In class, I befriended two young girls, and they were kind enough to see me out. I mentioned them once at your table, relayed their stories, their pressures, but I want to explain that time to you again, Apa. How I blurred my vision and imagined those slopes were our country's agave fields, slopes and slopes of that crocodile lotus. How I hadn't gotten old. How those beautiful girls quietly walked out of class, padded mats under their arms, and how the mats rolled out in the orange and sage pressed into the air. Summer, the last one with you. How I felt their prayers mantle every one of your promises to me. Bless each of the steps you took here. Cloak and float the things I had left that I'd been fortunate enough to keep for this long into the sky. How it was a ceremony. How their arms held me when it was over, when you were gone, when I came back to them, full of acknowledgement and oaken with age. This last poem is called The Hereafter. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone watching and to all the organizers and my fellow poets. If you are interested in reading more of my poetry, you can go to hernandezpoetry.com. There are links there to some more poems and to my little micro chapbook that came out in the summer. The hereafter is like everything around me, built by my father, his feet in wood frames full of mud and straw, comically slowed down by that strange small dog who ran ahead to be his companion. Of course, there are bean sprouts growing below the corn stalks, fields of wild tuberose and the boulder ledges of our river. The night filled with oil lamp bright, noon songs incomplete without some light radio static. It will always be Jalisco. I will just go out and say it. Say that the eyes of those who are mine adjust not to an ascent as much as a return. After all of our years, we finally set out toward the right horizon. Thank you very much. That's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Gustavo. That was fantastic. Thank you for being here. And next we have Karen Head.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. I'm looking at the
You are.
chat. You're good. Okay, good. I decided tonight that I would read some things that I really haven't read before. Julie inspired me. I also got nominated for Best of the Net this year for a literary journal that I really cannot recommend more highly. It sounds kind of cheesy, pun intended, but the Taco Bell Quarterly is actually doing some really amazing work. And I would encourage you to check out what they're doing and how they're encouraging anybody to submit poems. So this is my poem from the Taco Bell Quarterly called Your Song for Carson. It's a damn hot May afternoon, 1984, and tomorrow is your graduation. But today, for no reason but restlessness, we are driving up Swanee Mountain in your beat up Chevy Vega, orange with white doors, one of which doesn't open anymore. For a change, Todd isn't with us, our band of three like bickering pop stars broken up for the afternoon. This is what I've always wanted, still yearning for you, the cool guy I've loved since the first day of sophomore year. I haven't realized it yet that we aren't meant for each other, at least not that way. We climb onto a rocky outcrop, you right on the edge. You will always be on the edge. You tie a Japanese flag scarf around your head, a solitary sharpshooter, ready, fire, aim. I imagine kissing you, but this is your life, not mine. We sit for an hour watching the horizon. On the way back down the mountain, windows down, dusty wind tangling my long hair, I am laughing nervously as an empty Taco Bell bag swirls at my feet. I know our time together is almost gone. The radio doesn't work, so you begin to sing. You can tell everyone that this is your song, how wonderful life is while you're in the world. Years later, anytime I hear this tune, it still makes me feel alone. So, been watching a lot of British television lately. Don't really usually watch a lot of television, but the things that the pandemic gives us. This is called In the Photo, We Look Like Characters in a Mike Leigh Film. We have come to Essex, halfway between London and the edge of Southend Pier, for a day visit on summer holiday. The garden is everything it should be without seeming so. That hydrangea just happens to grow next to that dwarf maple ringed by candy-colored impatience. Even your dead father's koi pond has an air of the arbitrary, despite your stepmom's obsessive tending. Simply a tribute to him, she says. Even the weather is uncannily good, although a little cool in the shade. The chronicle of family news is banal. It is easy to blame jet lag as I lean back and let my eyes close. The family dogs sleep in the sun. Then the story slips in, how your cousin's wife snapped through something. The teapot? She was aiming at her husband and it nearly struck their toddler. We all sit up straighter, clear our throats, avoid each other's eyes. If this were a Lee film, now is when the oblivious bachelor vicar would appear, flustered from some trivial catastrophe on the motorway or at a council meeting, full of apologies for arriving late. Then the neighbor, the one who always has a drink in her hand and wears a too short skirt, would wriggle through a side gate and begin flirting with him. We would all act as if nothing was untoward, exactly as we do in the moment the shutter snaps. This is based on a painting in the Gladstone Library. It's called The Forgotten Woman. In the early years, I resisted a little, still the mistress of myself. I had not completely mastered the art of anonymity. I liked the painter, his soft green eyes, his tiny earlobes, his crooked left pinky finger. I saw him mornings in the orchard, would tickle his whippet's muzzle while he pocketed fresh fruit for lunch. We spoke little. The day he commented on my new dress and how striking it would be in his composition, that day, when no one else cared to notice, I said yes and meant it for a change. He never asked my name. When I saw my likeness framed, about to drop that blossoming orange, I felt I'd ventured too far. I was not destined to be a woman of history. Russet is no color for the forgotten. In another life, I've become a silent girl, the one who visits the gallery on open days, the one who skitters away when the docent approaches, the one who nicks a withered plum by the gate. It isn't difficult to be a mystery, to have people walk by every day, noticing but not noticing you, to be just another woman no one can name. Writing poetry is a luxury. And an epigraph from Leonard Cohen, and she lets the river answer. The Garonne has no time to speak to me. A turbulent mix, its tidal bore menacing, pushes me away from the water's edge. Just another half-sunk barge run aground, just another bit of entangled driftwood. Even the frogs mock me, growl and chirp warnings to keep my distance, silent only when I retreat. From the opposite bank, a church bell chimes 11. In Auvillard, the bells toll twice. A reminder not to miss something? The current is swift. I am trying to write a poem. The river will not answer me. The river only speaks French. And I'm going to end with this one from my collection about Paris, because I think we all are longing for other places, longing for other things, longing for this pandemic to end, longing to be together. This is very much a poem about longing. It's called Object de Désir. A 28 okay, I will try again. A 28,000 square foot lingerie shop is an appropriate metaphor for unfulfilled passion. The Galeries Lafayette, despite being in Paris, just an empty space, full of lacy enticements, accoutrements, amuse-bouche, if you will, the main course beyond what I am willing to reveal. This March evening, alone at Péradon, soaking bread in parsnip soup, or this afternoon besides Pont-Neuf, sleet bending my umbrella, or near midnight under the full moon, lucent above the Pantheon. I came here to make peace with poetry, trying to accept all this will forever be about longing. Thanks to all the other readers, and thank you to Collin and to Joe and Allie and everyone at the Georgia Center for the book. Oh, and thank you for your sign, Joe.
Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, and our final reader tonight is Cecilia Woloch.
I'm waiting for myself to appear on my screen.
You're there. We can see you.
Well, it's great because I can't see myself, and that's a good thing. Okay. It is wonderful to be here, even though we're not anywhere. I'm in Los Angeles. I love every poem I have heard today. Somehow, for all that I miss live poetry readings, there's some way that I feel I'm being, it's just me and the poet, you know, that you're reading just to me. So I thank each and every one of you. And Karen, your hair looks fantastic. So I'm going to read just a couple poems, and I'm going to read things I haven't read before or haven't read much. And what Karen said about how we are all longing for other places, longing for movement, longing for touch. This is a poem for Datça. Datça is a peninsula in southern Turkey. If there's the Datça Peninsula that ends in the town of Datça. And it's funny to me now, I won't say more, but it was about, this is really the summer of 2015. Poem for Datça. We didn't know the world we loved was ending. We didn't know how much we loved that world. How I could fly from Los Angeles to Paris, fly from Paris to Istanbul, from Istanbul, take a bus to the Black Sea coast of Bulgaria and back, travel south to Dalaman, to Marmaris, travel west along the crest of an emerald green peninsula, 50 miles in Meltem wind, cliffs falling away on either side, the blue-green Aegean below, and below the blue-green Mediterranean, all the way to the sleepy town of Datça, where we met in the dark street and kissed. Everything was still possible then, and we lived those days as if blessed in the breezes from both seas, and called this paradise. The lame goat tied to a tree on the hillside, where we made love in the back of your Jeep, the small dog that followed us all over town into sunny cafes where we met friends for tea. How you whistled a tune by Bregovic across the table from me as I wrote, remember, remember this. We swam in both seas, and both seas were golden. And on moonlit nights, we climbed to the roof of your house to be nearer the stars. You have a home here now, you said, and we planned where we'd meet again, in Berlin or in Paris or Istanbul, or high in the Caucasus Mountains, deep in the green of the singing world. We weren't thinking of bombs or coups. We weren't thinking of death being everywhere, although even then the bombs were falling. Refugees crowded the buses and stations, and Ataturk Airport was full of assassins, strangers in transit bearing strange passports, slipping into the country and out again. Even then, attacks were being planned, and governments were falling left and right to the right, and those taking power into their hands, stockpiling weapons, hardening borders, were taking that world away from us. Still, there was music in the streets those nights, the sky filled with gulls and the call to prayer. I still believed I could just keep going. You still believed you could go for days without washing the sea out of your hair. Next, I'm going to read a section from a long work in progress that some of you may know a little of, and it is called, the working title is Reign of Embers, R-E-I-G-N, and it begins in Paris with the attacks there in late 2015, attacks that my friend Collin first alerted me to, because he knows I don't have a television, and he knows that the place where the attacks were centered is what I consider my neighborhood in Paris. And then it just kept spreading, didn't it? It just kept spreading. And this piece of the poem is section 16. It's dated July 10th, 2016, and it's for Philando Castile. And I hope everyone remembers who he was. For Philando. Is it the same war or a different war? If the grown men are weeping now, if the cops, has it gone almost far enough or too far? Where does the law begin? Where does it end? Here's an image of a Black man behind the steering wheel of his car, his white shirt blossoming with blood, his head tipped gently back, as if in sleep, as if in love, as if he's waiting to be kissed. Is death the only law there is? Here are images of a city street in darkness, grainy, blurred, shots ringing out from somewhere above, gunfire raining down onto the street and gunfire raining up again. Some running away from the blasts, some running toward the sound, some in uniform falling there. Is it the same war or a different war? And who are our enemies? A Black woman walks into a convenience store. Two white cops stand in the checkout line. One cop asks, "How are you today?" "I'm okay," the woman says. Then the cop asks, "How are you really?" "I'm tired," she says. "I'm tired too," he says, and takes the woman into his arms. Is this true? Is anything true? How do we wake from the sleep of death? How do we make a prayer of love? In one province in Iraq, one tribe was given the law to uphold after their US trainers left. They were entrusted with the law because they'd been no friends of Saddam. And they turned the law on their neighbors. Extortion, torture, murder, rape, as if to ask, what else should we do with power, but what power has taught us to do? So in turn, their neighbors turned on them. Whole families plotting revenge, whole families dragged away to be killed. Where does the law begin? Where does it end? Is this the same war or a different war? The law takes the law into its arms. A Black police chief prays, holding his face in his hands, a man whose own son killed a cop and was killed in turn, a man who has risen through the ranks. Is it holy to have died in the name of justice, the name of peace? The man with his head tipped back looks tired, as if he only wants to sleep or be kissed, as if the blood blossoming from the wound in his chest were a flower, as if he might somehow wake from this. This poem was written on Eve's back porch. Eve Hoffman, a lot of you have been to her home on the Chattahoochee. I don't know if Eve is with us today. This was written early in the current reign of whatever this is. It's called Before the World Ends. It's a prose poem. Surely there was a river once, but there is no river here. Only a sound of drowning in the dark between the trees, the sound of wet, and only that. Surely there was a country that I called my country once, without a king and his band of thieves, without the bright screens everywhere in which another country lives. But what is it anyway, to live, to breathe, to act, to love, to eat? Surely there was a real earth, wild and green here, blossoming, land of milk and honey once, land of windswept plains and blood, land of shackles and of iron. And then the black smoke of its cities and the laying down of laws, under which some flourished, if you call that flourishing, and from which others would have escaped had there been anywhere to flee. My country, which is cruel and which is beautiful and lost. Surely there were notes that made a song, a pledge of birds, and not a child in any cage, no man or woman in a ditch. Surely what we meant was to anoint some other god, one made of wind and starlight pulsing, heart that matched the human heart. Surely that God watches us now, one eye in the river, one eye where the river was. I think that's about enough, don't you think, Collin? Is that good?
Well, that was, I could listen to you all night because everyone, I don't know if you can see the comments, but everyone's just singing your praises left and right over here. So we could listen to you all night.
I just feel bad about ending on a dark note.
It's okay. So. It's a beautiful dark note. So
well,
thank you so much, Cecilia.
I do not feel hopeless at all. So I hope it's okay that I say that.
Yes.
That I, okay. Thank you, Collin. And thanks
you.
to everyone for. I'm not watching the because I can't. I get too distracted if I see.
I understand. Well, if all the poets want to come back on, we will do a Q&A, quick Q&A here. So if anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat or they can raise their hand. Is that right, Joe?
Well, there should be a Q&A button either up at the top or the side. Yeah.
So if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask any of the poets. And I would like to say, I had to look back because I actually didn't have this in my notes. This is our 16th annual Voices Carry reading. We've been doing this reading for 16 years and we haven't missed a year. So 16 years we've been doing this reading and it's always just spectacular. So glad, and what a great, I think this might be, even though we're not together, this has been a spectacular reading. So
if only we could go to Manuel's for a martinis together.
Oh, wouldn't you love to go to Manuel's for a martini? I certainly would. That would be a lovely thing.
Yeah.
Well, just as a reminder too, Allie had up in the chat a link to Charis in case anybody wants to buy the books. And also don't forget, Charis will be selling the books for Mother Mary Comes to Me. So if you want to get on the pre-order bandwagon for that one, yes, I can probably pull my copy down.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Here we go. Show it off. Yes.
And actually, if you're in it, I'm just going to go ahead and say that it will be in Arts Atlanta. I did a review for it.
Thank you, Joe.
They asked me my opinion. Why, I have no idea, but for some odd reason they asked me for mine. So like everybody else,
awesome.
I gave it to them.
Thank you.
We do have a question, and this is from Lisa to all of you. And the question is, how are you personally handling the anxiety, if you are feeling it, during the lead up to this election?
Well, I've been cussing a lot. I don't know if that helps. So yeah, I think I've planned a couple of programs for decompressing, because regardless of how this election shakes out, it's just going to be a shit show. On either side, whatever happens, it's going to be nuts. And I just feel like I need to, where I am in my community mindedness, as far as being, an African-American Black person in America, and, all the people that I know who are like really stressing this in so many ways. I'm just trying to create some spaces to where, we can come together in this virtual world, have a cocktail, and just talk about what's happening. Because I think that part of this isolation, it's weird. So we have this isolation, right? We're all home, but then we also have this illusion of being in touch with the world, because we have things like Zoom, and we can be everywhere at the same time. But what we're missing is that dialogue, that conversation, right? So I've planned a couple of coloring conversations where it's like, get your coloring book, get your colors, get your drink, and let's talk about the shit show that is 2020 and this election, regardless of how it turns out, because bad things are going to happen. I know this. I think we all know this on some level, regardless of what happens. People are going to get hurt. My favorite line in the Game of Thrones is when, Dany is like, Draconis is like, burn all of it down. Like, something has to burn down completely so that we can build ourselves back up. I really believe that. And the burn down looks different depending on where you are. And I feel like what this election is going to do is it's going to like cook what we are as Americans in America. It's going to cook it down, and either people rise up to the occasion, or we go through a period of insanity. But I want to also have these spaces where people who like want to be in their rooms and close off, but also talking to another actual human being and feeling feelings, even if we can't hug or touch or kiss or whatever we're going to do, but actually having conversations to help us through this, because I feel like the conversations in this place of not being actually in front of people is the wellness that we need to happen in this particular time. So everything that I do virtually, open mic wise, I'm just like, we are. Can y'all not see me? Because I just saw a message that says turn on your video.
No,
I think
I can see
yeah. I think you maybe, because you're signed on twice. There you are.
Yeah, there
now
you go.
On there twice.
That's
okay. So y'all just been hearing my angry voice. Awesome.
No, we can see you too.
So the recording won't pick up your face for that part, but it's okay. We heard you. That's what matters. Now we'll see you and hear you.
But no. I mean, like right now, where I am with community is we have to just be able to have conversations with each other, and cry if we need to cry, feel what we need to feel. And then like tomorrow we're going to go and do our work, and then we're going to meet up again, and we're going to do this all over again until we can actually be safely in a place with each other to hug and love and talk and not spray each other with Lysol, because that's a crime. And it hurts. So yeah, that's where I am with all of this, dealing with this time. And I'm going to stop talking.
Did anyone else want to answer that question?
I'll take a little bit of a crack at it.
I was talking. Sorry. Okay.
Oh,
I'll wait.
Go ahead, Cecilia.
No, go ahead. You go.
Okay.
This is we have to conduct our orchestra a little more adeptly.
Quickly, I also feel that fear that Theresa was talking about. But the one thing that I think has kept me going is that, number one, I have so many people in my life that love and support me, and I know a lot of us do. And number two, this country is a hot mess right now. Like, I mean, I've never seen it this way, but you know, stuff's been hard for a lot of us for a long time in different ways. So we're not unprepared. And that's the thing that I think keeps me going. You know, whatever happens, like, we're not just like these little creatures that just, you know, sprung out of the ground. Like, we've been going through stuff. So we're ready. And that's my thought.
Yeah.
Cecilia?
Yeah, that's a really important thing to remember, Gustavo, I feel, is, you know, I just look, you know, it's, yes, this is unprecedented in a lot of ways. And a lot of ways, it makes perfect sense, you know. I don't, you know, I've my whole life not felt that this country was actually just, you know, but my paternal grandfather was shot in the street and killed by a cop. My paternal grandmother was murdered by a husband who was never convicted, never even arrested. So it's, you know, but I think to stay above the fear, you know, for me is important, because I think there's a lot of churning, you know, that from both sides that stir us up and not create the anxiety so much as aggravate. So I try to treat media the way I do sugar, which is I love sugar, you know, but I can't eat sugar all day or I'll go crazy. So, you know, so for me, getting through the pandemic is, you know, doing self-care, taking care of other people. I have astoundingly age begun to cook. I'd never fried an egg, and I'm pretty good at it, and it gives me a really different kind of satisfaction. And so I'm eating really, really well, and I'm making food for people I love. So trying to sort of, you know, I have a friend who lives a few blocks away she's Asian, she's been harassed in public, she's taking care of a brother who had a stroke, and she really doesn't cook at all. And I said, okay, this is one thing I can do. I can feed this small woman. And it's really, you know, it really helps. And literature, you know, to turn off the screen at a certain point in the day and read from the pages of a book, and to really read, you know, to read or reread Homer, you know, this is a good time for that. And I'm going to be real honest, Zoloft.
Well, we've got some comments here. Kathy Ellis just said that she wanted to say that all the poets were amazing and read beyond this world poetry, and that she loved this evening, and she loved Theresa's honesty, speak the truth, and our country is detoxing. It's not all of the sudden that these woes show up. So yes, all those things are very true. And then,
which Gustavo said, we're prepared.
Yes.
You know, Collin, what's interesting to me is like yesterday I had a conversation with Pearl Clegg and Nick Stone, right? And one of the things Pearl said that has been resonating with me since then, she said, don't be afraid. We've been here. We've done this before. Mm-hmm. You know, those of us who read know history repeats itself. Yes. And so we've been here before. Don't be afraid. And then also saying, don't be, you know, because like I think a lot of Black artists are in that stuck place of like, and now all of a sudden my work is being consumed by the masses, and it's because something terrible is happening in the world, right? Something is terrible is happening in the world, and now all of us are consumable. And because as a Black artist and as a Black person in America, I've never been groomed to like be like, and you did this because you earned it and you deserve it, you know? And so having people consume the art that we are producing, the question I think in a lot of our heads is, would it be consumed if terrible things weren't happening in the world? And Pearl is like, don't do it. You don't get to feel guilty because white people feeling guilty all of a sudden. That's not your place. You are doing art. You are doing good art. You are doing art that needs to be in the world. You are doing things that make conversations happening. Do not take that on. And I totally felt like, you know, she was the grandma put me in the corner. And it's just been resonating with me since it happened. And today I just felt so empowered to just like do all the things and like give none of the fucks. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I'm cussing, Joe. Sorry.
We've got one final question here, and so it's from Bozina. As one of you mentioned, being a poet is a solitary occupation. How different is it when the solitude is forced upon you now by the pandemic? Do you think it is easier for you to bear because you are used to being alone? Would someone want to jump in on that one?
For me, yes. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, I like being alone. So I just don't like holding still.
I hate it. I miss the energy of being in the room with other human beings. I miss hugs. I miss kissing Theresa Davis on her mouth on her birthday, which, you know, I didn't get to do this year. So, mwah. No, I think it's about connections. For me, it's actually really difficult.
Yeah. I miss being able to, because Karen and I would often meet and write together. I would go out to LA and see Cecilia, and we would, you know, discuss and write, and I'd go to London to see friends and do a lot of writing there. So being able to travel, being able to share the work while it's in progress, and just commune with other poets in person, I really, really do miss that. I really do. I do. Well, thank you, everyone. Montgomery Maxson said thank you all to the amazing poets tonight. So that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for everyone who listened, who stayed for the Q&A. And as Joe mentioned, we will be back, Poetry Atlanta and Georgia Center for the Book. We will be back on November 16th for the launch of Mother Mary Comes to Me, which I had the pleasure of co-editing with Karen Head, and can't wait. We're going to have 20 of the poets from the collection, each reading their poems from this book. So it is going to be a blowout evening. There will be a Q&A. November 16th, 7 o'clock. Please join us. And thank you again to all the poets tonight for joining us for the 16th annual Voices Carry. Love to everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.